this is our chance in all of these different national parks that we've talked about. This is our chance to use our wishing radio again. It's just like, I want to see a dinosaur. I want to see something cool. I wish dinosaurs were real. And these are the places we get to go to actually experience them and make them real.
This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like birds.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring.
I don't know if you guys know this about us, but we full-time RV'd for almost 3 years, a few years back.
Ooh, yeah, we did.
And we went to a ton of national parks. I mean, that was kind of the purpose of it. But I think as you travel through the national parks in a set amount of time where you're not just hitting like 1 or 2 a year, when you're going to a bunch, you start to notice some patterns or like some themes.
Right.
And so today we thought it would be fun because as we were traveling through the national parks, it's really cool to see that how you can kind of lump some of these parks together. Mm-hmm. And we really, really, really wanted to talk about dinosaurs.
Yeah, we did. Dinosaurs, fossils, all those things. Because you're right. And one of the things that I noticed was all the different, like you recognize some of the layers that like there's a few layers in a lot of these national parks that have a similar coloration. And you're like, oh, that kind of a gray blue. I've seen that in lots of different places.
Yeah,
and then,
we saw that
then all of a sudden
else.
You talk to a ranger and they're like, oh, there's dinosaur stuff here. You know? And so it's kind of crazy. It's like, oh my gosh. So that 3 years, man, we covered a lot of ground and we did see a lot of fun things. But yeah, the dinosaurs and fossils was one thing that really kind of caught us off guard, didn't it?
It did. And we're super nerdy about stuff like that, I feel like. We've got 2 little boys who play with dinosaurs all the time. They've got their favorites, and you just kind of geek out over that a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. So before we kind of jump right in. So one of my favorite movies from the early 90s is called We're Back. Have you ever heard of that movie, Ash?
No.
No, okay.
Well, I mean, I think I've heard of it, but it's not, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not as well known as like Lion King, Beauty and the Beast, and some of these other big ones, or Aladdin, But We're Back was one of my favorites growing up because I loved dinosaurs. And this movie is the main characters are all dinosaurs. And so if I could take you back just a little bit to the mid-90s, and let me just kind of tell you the basis of this movie. So there's this genius guy, and he wants to do some good in the world. And he ends up creating a special radio. And instead of like playing music and stuff like that, it actually plays wishes. And he found as he was listening to his wish radio, young people, especially kids, young children, they seemed to wish the loudest. And they kept wishing for the same thing over and over again. And the wish came through was dinosaurs. I wish I could see a T-Rex, or I wish I could see, a giant flying dinosaur or something along those lines.
Well, that's frightening. No.
Well, didn't you ever wish for something like that when you were a kid?
I don't know. Maybe. I think my wishes were more around princes and princesses and all that. Probably not dinosaurs.
That's probably true. I always wanted to ride on a dinosaur. And so, well, John Goodman's actually in this movie. He's one of my, he was awesome in this film. He actually is the voice for the T-Rex. And so basically, somehow these dinosaurs, they end up in New York City in the middle of a parade. And the song that he actually sings this song in the parade when everybody still thinks that he's a robot and not a real dinosaur, and everybody's super into it. But that song just like sets up the right tone, I think, for this episode. Okay. And so I'm not really going to sing it or anything, but it's just like, this is what John Goodman, he's just like Roll back the rock till the dawn of time, when the earth was smoking and the lava flowed. Roll back the rock till the dawn of time. You can blow your cool just like a volcano. It's just like do 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 do. So much. It's so cool, And I just loved that song. It's just, I feel like it sets the right tone for dinosaurs. Dinosaurs. Kids want dinosaurs. I want dinosaurs. Everybody wants dinosaurs, and that's what this episode's all about.
Yeah, man. Roll back the rock.
Yeah, baby. Woo.
Yeah, I think I'm really excited to talk about this. And this episode is going to be about fossils, kind of more in general.
Right. Dinosaurs included.
Let's start with dinosaurs, because there are two places we really want to talk about in the national park system that just are amazing dinosaur spots.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we have to start with, and this is not a national park, but you cannot talk about dinosaurs without talking about Dinosaur National Monument.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It is such a cool place, and it's in the middle of nowhere, it seems like, for most people. Dinosaur National Monument, it's in eastern Utah.
Part of it's in Colorado, too.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so you're right on the state border there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's not separated because you've got the town of Vernal right there and everything, but you have to kind of be going there on purpose.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Definitely its own destination. And I think it's probably the place that stands out best to me, that I've ever seen, real fossils, in the ground, because the way that they designed Dinosaur National Monument, or at least one specific area, the dinosaur quarry, it's all kind of still in place. The bones are still where they laid, 65, 70 million years ago. And so they just kind of uncovered them just a little bit, just to show you, so that you can identify what they are, see them all over the place. And they're just on this giant rock face. Looks like they kind of cut off half of a mountain, and you get to go and explore and see all these different fossils just looking at you. It's so cool.
So what he's talking about, it's called the Quarry Exhibit Hall. So the dinosaur bones are still in the dirt. They have excavated stuff out of there, but then they decided to leave a bunch just in place. Mm-hmm. And this wall has approximately 1,500 dinosaur bones. It's so crazy. And then there are places in the quarry actually where they let you touch real 150 million year old dinosaur fossils.
Whoa. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So it's just it's one of those places where you know what you're seeing, but you don't really know what you're seeing, because it's just mind blowing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like going to, Golden Corral, just it's you
so
can't,
many choices.
Exactly. You can't take it all in. You're just where do I start? Okay. And luckily they have a lot of, we've been in there when there's rangers walking around, and sometimes there's people that are actually doing some work up on the fossils. You can ask questions too. And, it's a really interesting place, and you can get your questions answered. But sometimes it's hard to know where to start, man, because there's so many things to look at.
So the Carnegie Quarry, this is what they say about this, is that it actually represents one of the most ecologically complete assemblage of the late Jurassic dinosaurs in the whole world.
Whoa.
And so the late Jurassic, that was 160-ish to 145 million years ago. But the late Jurassic, so when you think of dinosaurs, you're thinking the Jurassic period mostly. That's
right.
When you have all those that's when the T-Rex and the Brontosaurus and the Stegosaurus and all of those ones that are the super famous dinosaurs. Mm-hmm. That's that time period.
Wow.
And so that's what's so cool, I think, for me personally, about Dinosaur National Monument, is when you go see that quarry, you are looking at the famous ones,
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like you're going to Hollywood Boulevard and seeing all the stars on the sidewalk.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. So they have in this national monument, and it's not very big, and the quarry area is not, it's not huge, but they have the remains of 11 different species of dinosaurs from the late Jurassic period.
Wow.
So there are no T-Rexes.
Nope.
But I think a lot of people have not heard of the Allosaurus, which is actually very similar to the T-Rex. It was a big meat eater, big teeth, mean, he's the bully. He's the one eating all the dinosaurs. So they have Allosaurus and several other meat eaters or theropods. And then you've got the big long neck dinosaurs. And I think this is what's so cool to me because I love those ones.
Right.
But there's 5 different types of long necks, the sauropods, that you can find at the quarry.
Yeah, and those are huge. Those are so big.
And you can see, do you remember seeing full skulls? Like it looks like literally a dinosaur with the big long neck and the big long tail. Like you can see it in the rock there.
Oh, it's so out of this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even like what's crazy about it, I feel like, is like it's not even just like a bone here, a bone there, a bone here. Like if you really look at the wall, you can actually see like it's as if some of these dinosaurs just like laid down and fossilized in place, so you can actually kind of see how before they even when you go to the museum, how you can see everything all put together. Like it almost looks like that in the dirt.
Right.
In the quarry.
Yeah.
For some of these.
It's so neat. It's such a cool experience. And so, yeah, that's why it's like the headliner for dinosaurs. If you're thinking of the national park system, it's a national monument, but oh my gosh, you definitely have to, if you're interested in dinosaurs, or if you have someone in your family that's like dinosaurs, they're into it. This is where you go because it is so cool. You get to see, like I said, it's the buffet of dinosaurs. But it's so interesting because one thing that's kind of hard, we've talked about this like when we watch HGTV, it's hard to visualize like they do sometimes on the show. When they walk into a fixer-upper and they're like... Oh
yeah, I'm a terrible visualizer. I'm like, that just looks like a piece of crap.
Why would you buy that house? That doesn't make any sense. And then they like fix it up and it's gorgeous and you're like, oh, what a deal.
Yeah.
But when you go to like some of these places that have dinosaur fossils, you almost have to put on your HGTV eyes and put yourself back like 150 million years. You have to realize everything that's around you, the setting, all the plants, the temperature, how much water is around, everything was different back when the dinosaurs were here. Like especially in the Mountain West area and just a little bit east, a lot of this area that we're going to be talking about today was covered in like a shallow sea, or it was kind of like Florida in a lot of ways.
Yeah, more tropical, more plants, like more water than we've ever seen in the area.
Absolutely. And so what you're seeing now, you're seeing leftovers from 150 million years ago. And so that's why when you think of huge creatures, you're looking around, you're seeing a sagebrush, you're like, there's no way dinosaurs could have survived here on that diet, But that's just because things have changed so much over the last millions and millions of years. And so you have to realize, all these creatures, everything was different. And so a lot of times when you've got like a big, almost like a graveyard of dinosaur bones, kind of like you have at the Carnegie Quarry, a lot of times, a lot of those skeletons or bodies washed up into the same area. Or maybe it was like a watering hole that a lot of dinosaurs frequented, and then they got eaten by a giant reptile, or something like that. There were situations where that created where all these dinosaurs currently lay. There's a story behind all of these dinosaur places, and it's a 150 million year old story.
Yeah. And just the fact that you can see all those right there in that one spot is crazy. What I also think is cool about dinosaurs, so not only can you go to the quarry, which is 150% like worth the trip. That's why you go.
Right.
But there is a trail and it's up there by the quarry. And it's called the Fossil Discovery Trail. It's not very long. It's like 2 miles or so round trip. They've actually left some dinosaur bones that have been discovered. Like they've left them in the rocks along that trail as well.
Nice.
And so that's really cool because you can walk that trail and you can I know for us, like it's really fun because the kids, it keeps them engaged because you're like, there's dinosaur bones, on this trail. So you got to keep looking. You got to keep hiking. You're looking in the rocks. You're trying to see these. And so that's a really fun activity in that area as well.
Right. So cool. Like I said, we love to hike. And so that's cool that it's a interactive hike. More than usual.
So you go see the quarry. You can walk the Fossil Discovery Trail, and that is just like some of the coolest activities that you can do, especially if you have little kids that just love dinosaurs, or if you're, a grown adult that loves dinosaurs. I mean, you just won't see a better display in any national park.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And for those, this is kind of a shout out to my son that his Allosaurus is his favorite dinosaur.
Even before we saw it at Dinosaur National Monument.
Exactly. And so this is a little bit of a shout out for people that are just like, well, if it's not a T-Rex, I don't know if I want to make the trip, but Allosauruses were so cool. They were huge too. They kind of have an interesting growth pattern for their life. And let me kind of explain what I mean by that. And so these Allosauruses, I mean, goodness sakes, they were so big, but a lot of times when you think of like dinosaurs getting bigger and growing up, you think, okay, they just, grew up proportional, but actually they didn't just kind of go from little versions of themselves to big versions of themselves. They actually had kind of an interesting teenage adolescence.
Don't we all?
Yes, we all do.
Don't look at my pictures. They're awful.
Exactly. During that middle teenage year, during their adolescence, because as adults, these are the big dinosaurs. Their prey are the big sauropods that you were talking about. They're going after stuff
the
like
Apatosaurus.
Yeah. They're going after the big things. So they've got to be hefty and big and thick. They got to be the big daddy monster. And so before they could get that big, they couldn't attack these big prey animals. And so somehow they had evolved so that while they were smaller, what they did basically from their knee down to their foot. So their shin, part of their leg, got way bigger than their thigh. It grew a lot faster. And so what that did for them was it allowed them to get really fast and quick and agile as they got bigger. So that during their teenage years, they could prey on some of the smaller, faster things as they gained weight. They think that these animals could put on like 350 pounds a year.
Nice.
Of just muscle weight, man.
Uh-huh.
And then eventually, they got huge and their thighs got nice and, tough and big so that they could handle taking on these big creatures. But I thought that was really interesting because that's different from a lot of other theropods or, these cool meat eater dinosaurs. They have a little bit different science around them as they grew up. So shout out to my son. Allosauruses are cool. So.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and you can also find Stegosaurus here, which is our other son's favorite.
Yes.
It's just it's a win-win-win for everybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Well, honestly, we could talk about Dinosaur National Monument for a long time, but there is one other national park that's just like really heavy on the dinosaur fossils.
Yes, our next stop on the dinosaur train.
Nice. Yeah.
That's a show, right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Our kids watched that forever.
What's our next stop, Ash?
Okay, so now we're going down to Texas.
Woo!
Along the Rio Grande River and talking about Big Bend National Park.
Oh, yes. Big Bend is so cool. And just like at Dinosaur, you've got to use your HGTV eyes because a lot of the area around Big Bend is really barren. It's very deserty. It's kind of a lot of it, unless you're kind of in the mountainy areas and some of the other sections, it kind of looks kind of like a lot of the desert land is kind of a boring yellow.
It is. It's barren and mostly flat.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of vegetation. It gets so hot down there.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you're right on the banks of the Rio Grande at this park. And so, you've got lots of trees and greenery and birds and, all this stuff like right next to the river.
Mm-hmm.
But then you just go out a little ways, 100 feet, and there's nothing. There's nothing. It's desert.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a really interesting area. So cool. We love this park.
Mm-hmm.
I get a lot of questions about this park, actually. But today we wanted to talk about the dinosaur part of this park, which actually a lot of people don't know. A lot of people don't even think about there being dinosaur bones here.
And kind of how I mentioned that boring color, kind of the boring yellow. There's a bunch of different places throughout these national park dinosaur sites that the boring colors are the ones that yield the best fossils. The theme for the Big Bend dinosaurs is everything is bigger in Texas.
Nice. Yeah.
The Lone Star State never disappoints, It's incredible. And so there's a place that you can actually see these dinosaurs.
Well, if you stop at it's called the Fossil Discovery Exhibit, and you'll pass it like right as you're coming into the park and approaching Panther Junction and kind of the main visitor center area. And honestly, like that stop is kind of, people just pass right on by it all the time.
Right.
You're on the main highway, like you're ready to get to the more well-known stops. Every time we've been there, we've been like the only ones there. Like, does nobody know how amazing like the dinosaurs in this park are?
I know, it's crazy.
So yeah, you can stop there. You can walk around. They have like a fully like reconstructed flying dinosaur. Like up on the ceiling that's massive. And then they've got all sorts of like panels and stuff that you can learn more about the dinosaurs in Big Bend.
Right. Okay. Yes. So more than 90 dinosaur species have been unearthed in the park, including, it wasn't named after the Alamo, but it's actually called the Alamosaurus.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. And so it's a big sauropod. So those Land Before Time, it's, think of Littlefoot, and his grandparents. So really long necks, really long tails. Let's talk about the Alamosaurus for a minute. So sauropods, which is really interesting, there's a ton of them in North America for a long time, but about 105 million years ago, they went extinct in North America. And then there was like a 60 million year gap where there weren't any sauropods. And then all of a sudden, Alamosaurus shows up.
Nice.
In the
Good
fossil
job,
record.
Buddy.
Yeah, they think that Alamosaurus migrated from South America to North America. Once the Panama kind of a neck became unearthed.
Well, and that makes sense to find them in Texas, though. You're at very bottom of what United States is. So.
Right. Not only was it like odd that it came out of extinction, basically, but also it was the biggest sauropod to ever live in North America. And this specific one that they found in Big Bend was the largest one they've ever found.
So how big was he?
So the Big Bend Alamosaurus measured at 100 feet in length and probably weighed over 50 tons. And considering that most of the Alamosauruses, they were like, I don't know, 70, maybe 80 feet, I think, in size. And so this one was just like, hey, I'm in Texas. I might as well get huge.
Yeah.
So huge sauropods, the Alamosaurus. But you mentioned in the exhibit how they have that giant flying dinosaur. It's actually, the name of it, I'm probably going to butcher it a little bit, but it's Quetzalcoatlus. Quetzalcoatlus, something like along those lines.
Some of these names, it was just like, we are not scientists by any means.
Oh my gosh, I have no idea how to pronounce these things. Oh my gosh. But okay, so what's cool about this Big Bend area, like I mentioned, it was kind of like, it was a shallow sea area. There was a lot of, it was kind of like Florida, like the Everglades that we talked about in the episodes of the podcast. So there's tons of birds, a lot of opportunity for flying creatures. But at this time, in the evolutionary chain of creatures on Earth, there's something called, this is going to be nerdy for a second, it was called convergent evolution. Okay. So what that means is like, there's an opportunity here that nature finds in a certain ways. And so like the three main flying creatures that have ever developed on Earth are birds, pterosaurs, which are these flying dinosaurs, and bats. Those are pretty much the only things that have ever figured out, hey, there's a whole ecosystem, there's a whole lifestyle that we can live here. And those are the only three that have ever kind of figured it out. But none of them are really related. And so convergent evolution means you have animals from all different kinds of DNA structure and family groups and things like that. So you've got like reptiles, the pterosaurs are kind of like the reptiles that learned how to fly. Right.
They figured out that there was a whole ecosystem that was being untapped by the rest of the reptiles, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so the pterosaurs are like the reptiles that learned how to fly. Bats are mammals that learned how to fly. Birds, if you believe what they talked about in Jurassic Park, which I probably is true, are the kind of like the raptors, that learned how to fly in certain ways. And they're kind of related. And so it's
they're related to dinosaurs,
right,
which we'll talk about, which is crazy.
Yes, I'm so excited. Yeah. But yeah, it's so interesting. And this area down here at Big Bend had the largest of all of these flying dinosaurs, these pterosaurs.
Texas.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so big, I can't even fathom it. The wingspan on this Quetzalcoatlus or whatever was like 40 feet.
That's so frightening.
Exactly. And so they were just so big. And I don't know, it kind of blows me away how I can't imagine having a 40-foot dinosaur, flying dinosaur or whatever coming after me.
No, I mean, that's like a full-on dragon.
Yeah, exactly. That's How to Train Your Dragon.
Yeah.
That's what the movie was based on. Maybe.
Or dragons.
Or dragons, yeah.
But that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
A creature like a dragon actually somewhat existed, at least in size.
I think the dream that I had as a kid, actually riding a dinosaur, a 40-foot wingspan dinosaur that flies, is probably the one that actually could carry me. That's realistic.
Yeah, that's stuff from legends. That's like all the, books about elves and witches and,
yes.
all the flying creatures.
Oh, okay. The last thing that I want to talk about for Big Bend, one of the big, Lone Star giants of the Lone Star State, is one, I think I'm saying this right, Dinosuchus or Dinosuchus, something along those lines. What that is it's probably actually Captain Hook's worst nightmare. They call it
giant crocodile.
The terror crocodile.
Nice.
Yes. And so this thing is famous because it's like 30 to 40 feet long. And they actually have one of the skull of one for you to look at when you're in that fossil exhibit. And it is just like, I could literally lay down almost, and from head to toe, I could just lay down in its mouth.
Yeah, that thing was massive. 30 to 40 feet long. So like a big crocodile is like, 15 feet?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So half that size, and like a 15-foot crocodile would eat you for breakfast.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So to have it be twice that, and if you stand next to that skull, like...
Yeah, we are so snack scary. Sized.
Yeah.
We are just breakfast. We're not even like a 3-course meal for something that big. I don't know. It's hard for me sometimes to believe that these things actually exist. It's amazing. I feel like that area of Big Bend is kind of like, the Star Wars prequels, Phantom Menace, Do you remember that scene when they go to the Gungan city? Like where they met Jar Jar?
The one underwater.
Yeah, the one underwater.
Okay.
Well, the big boss there, he says he's not really going to help him, but they can go through the planet Gore, and so he gives them like this little ship and they have to go down into the deep because that's how they're going to get to Naboo.
Oh, and that thing chases them.
Yeah, they have.
Okay.
Well, that scene, it's like the perfect example of what I imagine Big Bend to be like 150 million years ago, where there's a giant fish chasing them, and then a gianter fish comes and eats it, and then like a giant crocodile comes and get it, and then an even bigger crocodile bites onto that one, and Qui-Gon's like, there's always a bigger fish.
Right. And they all live in Big Bend.
Yes, exactly.
And also, Jar Jar Binks is the worst. This is a hard movie to get through.
No way, man. No way. So good.
Okay, so that is kind of like the main national park sites that you want to go to if you love dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm.
It is worth noting there you can find especially dinosaur footprints in or near a lot of other national parks.
Right. Oh, yeah.
One of the most surprising for me was Denali.
Right.
And they just recently discovered footprints, like within like the last 10 years. And now they're just finding them all over the place. Right. And it's a big deal because they didn't know, really that because you're so far north and you're so, it's such an extreme landscape up there. They had not really discovered dinosaur stuff up there at all.
Exactly.
And so, that was a really big deal, which is super exciting. So I think that's really cool. You can go to, it's called the Murie Science and Learning Center. It's just right there by the main visitor center. But you can go there and you can actually learn more and see like a cast of the footprint that they found first and
Nice.
things like that. So that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
The other parks I think that are worth mentioning are down in Utah.
Oh, yeah. The Southwest, man. There are some really good ones down there. And I think one of the main reasons why it's so good is because the sandstone preserves and holds on to the shape of the footprints for such a long period of time, giving us an actual chance to discover them and enjoy them. And a lot of other places, we'll talk about a place later on where the footprints will erode after like 2 years. But in the Southwest, kind of like Arches, Canyonlands, Capitol Reef area, those ones, they erode very slowly.
I think it's so funny down there because like we'll be hiking and it will just be like, oh, dinosaur track, and like they'll have a little sign. I remember when we hiked down into Horseshoe Canyon in Canyonlands,
Mm-hmm.
there's dinosaur tracks along the trail you're actually following to get down into the canyon.
Yep.
And they just like, I don't even know. They didn't even have signs. It was just like the track was like surrounded in a little circle of rocks.
Uh-huh.
And it's like, if you don't know what you're looking for, you're not going to see it. But like, it's super cool. There are literally dinosaur footprints on the same trail that you're taking.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And so there's another one in Arches that's kind of like that. It's on the Willow Springs Road, and we had to pull off. We rented a Jeep, and so we pulled off our Jeep, and there's a little sign there that showed you, and there was a few tracks that you could actually...
you could see like how one dinosaur took steps.
And how big their stride was.
Yeah.
It was so crazy.
So that one was cool.
That one was kind of like a duck-billed dinosaur, if I'm not mistaken. I think a lot of the bigger ones that we saw along on some of those trips have been duck-billed dinosaurs. Kind of like Ducky and Land Before Time. Kind of cute, but they're so
but
big.
Huge. Yeah.
Yeah, they're so big. But one of my favorite ones, my favorite dinosaur in Utah is the Utah raptor. And they actually found some remains of a Utah raptor in the Grand County. And that got Arches, Canyonlands. That's where Moab is. And they found a footprint of the Utah raptor in Arches National Park. And so sometimes a lot of these national parks won't publish where some of these sites are in the national park because sometimes they've been vandalized. Some people have actually cut the footprints out of the rock and taken them home.
Dang you people.
I know.
Curse you.
And so please, if you find it, leave it, just
leave
enjoy
it and tell
it.
a park ranger.
Yes.
Yeah, because actually, when we talk about Badlands, there's some cool stories surrounding regular people who found stuff.
Oh, cool.
But so a lot of these parks in the Southwest, you will find fossils, dinosaur tracks, things like that. Keep your eyes peeled if that interests you.
Yep.
But for sure, if you're into the dinosaurs, you got to go to Dinosaur National Monument. You've got to go to Big Bend.
Mm-hmm. And you've got to go, if you want to see the tracks, the Southwest is a great place for you to do that. In case you were wondering why I said the Utah Raptor is one of my favorite dinosaurs, it's because that's what Steven Spielberg patterned the Velociraptor after in Jurassic Park.
Yeah, I hate those things. That one
Clever
scene,
girl.
oh my gosh, the scene where they're like hiding from the raptors.
Oh yeah, the
Still
kids are in the
haunts-
kitchen.
Yeah, that still haunts my nightmares.
I'm
Those
trying to do
things
the
are scary.
sound. As the Velociraptor just like clicks its teeth and its claw. It was so cool. Those were huge too. The Utah Raptor was the biggest of all the raptors. Most dinosaurs in their evolutionary chain got larger as time went on. The raptors actually kind of got smaller. They started out big as the Utah Raptor and they got a little bit smaller and probably worked in packs as they got a little bit smaller. So it's so cool.
So cool.
All right, I'm going to take you on a quick break from the podcast because I want to share something that has turned out to be really fun for me and the family. I'm talking about the free Dirt in My Shoes National Parks checklist. As simple as it sounds, this list of the national parks has become something I really love to look at. Organized by state and with a little checkbox next to each of the national parks, this checklist has become something of an adventure diary for me. With all the national parks listed on one page, it makes it easy to see what adventures I've had and which ones I have to look forward to. After you put yours up, I think you'll find that you have way more invested in it than you originally realized, and it will turn out to be more rewarding than you expected. Try to put it up in a somewhat visible space, because you'll find yourself having conversations that sound like, "Ooh, do you remember when we went there? That was so cool. Let's do it again." Or, "When do you think we'll make it there? That sounds like so much fun. Let's go there next year." You'll find that it's pretty good at making adventure buddies out of the people that matter most. Besides, you bought those hiking boots for a reason. You might as well get credit for where they've been. To get your own free Dirt in My Shoes National Park checklist, click on the link in the show notes below or go to our website, dirtinmyshoes.com/podcast.
Now, because we promised this is a fossils episode,
Yes.
we are going to move to some different kinds of fossils. So next we want to talk about fossils of creatures.
Yes.
And that encompasses basically anything except dinosaurs.
Yeah, it's younger history, actually, generally speaking. Dinosaurs went extinct. The mass extinction for dinosaurs was like 65 million years ago. And so after that happened, that's what we're going to be talking about now in some of these other national park units, where mammals have finally come onto the scene nice and strong, and there's huge mammals and lots of different, types of variety of creatures, but mostly it's going to be mammals that we're going to be seeing.
Okay, so we have to start in White Sands National Park for this.
Oh, yes. I love this place.
Now, what's so cool to me about White Sands is they recently discovered some new footprints in this park. And this park, what you see as far as fossils is primarily footprints.
Right.
And, footprints that were preserved in this ground and then covered up by the massive sand dunes. But actually, what's really interesting to me is it was a discovery of some footprints that actually helped be the catalyst to changing White Sands from a national monument to a national park. I don't know if you remember what happened. I was like so excited about this because I'm a total geek.
Okay, yeah, I remember you talking about this.
Do you remember what kind of fossils or what kind of footprints they were?
Human footprints.
They were human footprints. Like, I am dying. I just want to talk about this for a minute and then we can talk about the animals. But previously, they thought that the human history in this area was about 16,000 years ago or so, 16 to 18,000 years ago.
And by this area, you mean like North America.
Right. Right. In 2018, researchers discovered female footprints. And what's so cool about it is that the footprints show us that she was probably walking for about a mile and she was carrying a child.
Right.
They can tell by the way the footprints are in the ground. And also that, like, they can tell where she, like, set down a child for a minute and made her child walk next to her for a minute and then picked him back up. But they said they could tell, like, by the way the footprints were in the ground, that she was, like, shifting weight between the sides, like her hips.
Right. Any
how
mom
it is.
Any parent can relate to that.
Yeah. And
you're so heavy.
Setting the kid down. Oh my gosh, walk for yourself for a minute.
But then you think to yourself, don't put the baby down when you know it's around her.
Right. Right. And so it said, like, the footprints broadened and they slipped in the mud because you can tell she was carrying some extra weight. So what's cool about this is that they actually, they found, like, some grass seeds. I feel like it'd be really hard to find grass seeds. But anyways, they used radiocarbon dating, and that gave the dates of almost 23,000 years ago.
So it moves the human timeline back 9,000 years or something like that.
And so humans, they're going, wow, humans lived and then they said, okay, and this is the other cool thing. So then they found some of these footprints in White Sands prove that the humans actually coexisted and interacted with extinct ice age animals.
Whoa.
And so they actually found a set of footprints that shows what appears to be a human stalking a sloth.
Nice.
So it's just
Sid, Stalking Sid.
We will talk about this. It was not a Sid. These sloths are not Sid sloths.
Oh.
But yeah. And so I just think like, so what's cool about White Sands is they're called playas, but it's basically the sand has hardened into a flat area, or it's kind of like, what you would find underneath a lot of the sand dunes. It's hard. It's almost like cement.
Almost like it's like a sandstone, but not quite as sturdy.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where they're finding all of these footprints. They've had to dig underneath sand dunes to like get to the playa area for some of these. You can hike to a playa. This is not the playa where they found the human footprints. Obviously, they really don't let people go there. And this area is constantly changing because it's just sand.
Right.
Mostly
this is
now.
Blowing all over the place.
But it didn't used to be. This is all before, like these footprints were all put into the ground before it was sand dunes.
Right. HGTV eyes again. Right.
I just love talking about that because I just think it is so epic this was in the last 5 years. They found footprints in White Sands that literally changes our understanding of human history in North America.
Oh, it's so cool. And it literally is like the show Ice Age, where you have humans, and the saber-toothed cats, existing. What was his name? Diego, hunting humans and humans hunting Diego back and forth. It was just like that. You know? It's so fun. So tell me, why isn't it like Sid, Lord of the Flame?
Okay, so the footprints and things that they find in White Sands are of the Pleistocene epoch, which was 2.5 million years ago until about 12,000 years ago.
Right.
This is the time period when the Ice Age happened. So if you are wanting to get a good idea of what they're finding at White Sands, it is all of those Ice Age,
all those creatures,
the scenery, and
the Great Migration. They're escaping the Great Glaciers and everything.
That's White Sands National Park, which is so cool. But the reason that it's different, here are the animals that you can find that they've found: the American lion, which obviously really doesn't exist anymore as we know it.
An American Mufasa.
It is an ancient camel.
Nice.
So they actually said you could find camels in White Sands. Dire wolf, which is about the same size as like a modern gray wolf, but they said like the jaw is so much stronger. Like that thing was tearing things apart.
Ooh.
And then, so then you have what's known as the Harlan's ground sloth.
Okay, Sid.
So here's Sid, but not Sid. This ground sloth was 10 feet tall.
Wow. Oh my gosh.
And it weighed over a ton.
Whoa.
So it is not Sid.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. That's huge. That's as tall as a basketball hoop, man.
Yeah, crazy, right?
Whoa.
So
that's hard to imagine.
Yeah, there were other types of sloths at that time, but in White Sands, they have found the Harlan's ground sloth.
Ooh, that's so cool.
And then they have found footsteps or footprints for the Columbian mammoth.
Okay, I know about those. Those are huge, right?
They're huge. They're 14 feet at their shoulder. These mammoths are not woolly mammoths. They said actually this area was too warm for woolly mammoths. And so the Columbian mammoth, it didn't have a bunch of hair. It didn't need it to stay warm.
Oh, wow. Okay. Wow. We are the weirdest herd I've ever seen. That wasn't very good, Sid. I need to work on that voice a little bit. Oh my gosh.
And then you have the saber-toothed cats. They have found footprints of the saber-toothed cats in White Sands as well.
Oh, wow.
And those ones, they said the teeth on those are like 7 to 10 inches.
Oh my gosh.
That's huge, right?
I can't imagine coexisting with a lot of these creatures. That would be insane to me. I feel like if I was thrown back into that time, Ice Age, I'd be like Sid when he was with Manny and it started to rain and Manny's like, you're going to make some shelter. And Sid's like, I've got a huge brain, I've got a highly evolved brain. And Manny's like, you have half a stick. And he's like, but with my evolved brain, I can do amazing things, I feel like I would be just like him, way overconfident in my abilities, and then I would be someone's lunch.
Anyway, yes, picture Ice Age. I mean, that's basically what White Sands was, before the actual ice came, and just all the creatures that they found footprints there. I just think it's super impressive. I love, we'll hike the Playa Trail or whatever as you're kind of hiking along the more hardened areas.
Mm-hmm.
And try to see if you can see anything in there, because they have found footprints in those areas.
Right. Oh, such a cool place. What an amazing historical artifact, that all those gypsum dunes are, that's what White Sands is. It's all gypsum, and that's why it's so white. But what a unique place. It's got so many things that are preserved. Wow. And a cool story too.
So cool. And just recent discoveries.
When Ray Romano wrote Ice Age, he had no idea how true to life it really was. Oh my gosh. So cool.
Or maybe he did.
Maybe he did.
Maybe he's been to White Sands.
Where's our next stop on the dinosaur train? Where do you want to go next?
Okay. So next, talking about creature fossils, we have to go to Badlands National Park.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I love Badlands National Park. It's so cool, but why is it on our next stop?
Okay, so a lot of people don't know this, but Badlands has a huge collection of fossils.
Sweet.
Huge. So Badlands National Park, they say, is home to one of the world's richest fossil mammals.
Okay.
And so you've got different animals than what you will see, and this is way after the dinosaurs.
Right.
But still, some really cool things. And so they talk about the Native American history with fossils in this park, actually.
Oh.
Before, modern day paleontology even existed, the people of the Oglala Lakota Nation, which if you've been to Badlands, part of Badlands actually is run by the Native American Nation that is right down in that area. If you go down to the White River section of the park. And anyway, these Oglala Lakotas, they discovered large fossilized bones and turtle shells.
Ooh.
And they found fossilized seashells. They were the first people to realize that this area of the Badlands was actually underwater.
Nice.
Because, they were finding all these things.
Right. That giant shallow sea we talked about.
Right.
It extended all the way to here. Wow.
Yeah. And now what's cool is that the area that's now included in Badlands National Park, so it's known as the White River Badlands. But the White River Badlands are considered to be the birthplace of vertebrate paleontology in the American West.
Ooh,
and
cool.
So that's, again, that ties back into how many mammal fossils you find in this area, and they have specimens from Badlands in the Smithsonian and things like that. They've just been finding all this really cool stuff that they've been sharing all over. And so what's really cool to me, you can go to the Ben Rifle Visitor Center, which is the main visitor center in the park. And you can they have a fossil preparation lab, which is world class. I mean, it's just they did not cut corners on any of this.
They spared no expense.
Yes. And so you can go there, and they actually allow the visiting public inside. And so you can go in and you can watch them working on the fossils. You can ask questions. You can see what they're doing. You actually go in and you watch this. And what's cool is it's turned into the biggest ranger program in the park.
Wow.
It's people are just so excited to go and see this fossil preparation lab. So I think that's really cool. A lot of people don't realize that Badlands is just so heavy in fossils.
I think the one thing that I really know about Badlands with the fossils, you know so much more about it than I do, but my favorite thing is thunder beasts. That's one of the main things that they have there that they've found a lot of is thunder beasts. And so what I mean by thunder beasts is if we're going to go back to Ice Age just for a second, remember when Sid stepped in poop? Okay. And there were these two giant rhino creatures.
Right.
And one of them is Carl, a dandelion. Where did you find it? And then Sid walks through the salad. He's oh, gross. This is not my day. And then he sees the rhinos. He's oh, you rhinos. You have really small brains, and then when it's Carl, he ruined our salad, Those two guys, those are thunder beasts, and those are all over Badlands, and so those are some of the main fossils, the big mammal rhino-looking fossils. Those are what they've found here in Badlands, the ones that really just wanted a salad.
Yeah, sure. Those ones, and time period wise, we're talking, so for the thunder beasts, that's like 38 to 34 million years ago.
Whoa.
So still quite a long time ago. But yeah, I mean, right during that same era.
I wonder if those are related to like the modern day buffalo. I don't know. Those are today's thunder beasts.
I know. That's what I thought too, actually, when I was like thunder beasts. Like that reminds me of a herd of buffalo running through Yellowstone. But no, they are more like a rhino.
Okay. Interesting.
But then they also have, so they have what are called oreodonts.
Okay.
And these are fossil mammals. It's one of the most common fossils that you find in the Badlands. These ones were like from about 40 million to 5 million years ago. And these are a hoofed mammal.
Ooh, okay.
And so that might be more, it says modern versions of this are the bison and the bighorn sheep.
Okay. Interesting.
So these ones, it says that they likely looked like a mix between a camel, a sheep, and a pig. So.
Okay. That's a really interesting mixture.
Yeah.
But they're ungulates, basically. They're like the ancient ancestor of a lot of ungulates. So some things with like cloven hooves and stuff like that.
Yep. Yep. So they do have those. And then another cool thing that they have found in this park, they're called mosasaurs.
Okay.
And these are marine lizards. And that's a really nice way to say it, actually. A marine lizard. This was 75 to like 69 million years ago. And these were 50 feet long.
Whoa. Like the terror crocodiles.
Yes. So a mosasaur he was the top predator in the world's oceans at that time. He would eat anything he could catch.
Nice.
And most of like the earliest mosasaur fossils were discovered in South Dakota.
Whoa.
So, and this whole area it was a shallow sea, but this guy was just the king of it.
Did you ever see Jurassic World?
I don't know. I can't keep him straight. Have
okay,
I?
Jurassic
I don't
World.
know.
Well, if it's a spoiler, just tune out for like 30 seconds. But, at the end of Jurassic World, there's this giant like sea creature that comes out of the water and just like eats, a giant T-Rex like looking thing. A 50-foot crocodile, I think, could definitely do that. Mosasaur, is that what you said it was? Mosasaur. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be so crazy. I wouldn't want to get anywhere near that.
Yeah. So what's interesting about Badlands is they have not found any dinosaur fossils in the park. But I mean, obviously they have found other things.
Right. They got all these other fossils, just not past 65 million years.
A marine lizard that's 50 feet long and eats everything.
It's just an iguana.
Yeah. Oh, most of the fossils that they're finding, a lot of the fossils they're finding in here are like the late Cretaceous, which is still during the dinosaurs.
Right.
But because Badlands was covered in water, and when we say shallow sea, it wasn't like super shallow.
Right.
You're still talking, a good amount of depth. But yeah, so they're saying for the Badlands area itself, actually, because it was so full of water and stuff, there really weren't dinosaurs in this shallow sea area.
Because it was mostly covered by water during that whole 250 million years ago to 65 million years ago, basically.
Yeah, so they don't think the dinosaurs really swam in this sea, which is why we don't find dinosaur fossils here. But you do find other creatures that lived around the same time, like the mosasaur.
Interesting.
So, yeah, but I think for me, what is the coolest about Badlands is this is the park where, like, people have found fossils that nobody knew were there, like regular people.
Just hiking around?
Yeah. Yeah. It's so cool, actually, to me. So there's a couple different instances of this. Do you want to talk about the first one?
Sure. So the first one that I remember, there was this girl just hiking around and she was on a trail and she found like a saber-toothed cat, a super well-preserved saber-toothed cat tooth, and like part of its skull, I think, was all preserved.
Yeah, it was the skull.
Yeah.
It's a 7-year-old girl.
Yeah. It's just this little kid. What's this?
Well, and they said she was doing like a junior ranger program. She was trying to get her badge.
Right.
And they were just hiking over there, like around kind of close to the visitor center.
Uh-huh.
And she literally found a saber-toothed cat skull. Still in the rock, you know, but she went and told the rangers, and then they were able to extract it. And
wow, that's incredible. Like when we talk about interactive hiking, you know, that's just keep your eyes open. That's awesome.
yeah, and a 7-year-old, I mean, that's like our kid's age. Can you imagine how excited you would be?
Yeah.
They've got this cute little picture of her on the website, and she's just grinning from ear to ear.
Youngest paleontologist ever. That's so cool.
Yeah, so that's really neat. And then the other one that was found by just some regular guys, they were at a picnic area. They started what is now known as the Big Pig Dig in Badlands.
Uh-huh. That one sounds awesome.
Yeah,
Sounds like a barbecue.
It does.
Like a Hawaii. Like what do they have in Hawaii? Those luau's or whatever. We're gonna roast a pig, man, and we're gonna find some bones.
Big Pig Dig. So these two visitors, they found an exposed vertebrae near this picnic area. They told the park rangers, and then the park rangers went in there and basically found what was a ancient watering hole, which just piles bones upon bones upon bones.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's really cool. So they found, it's named for these pig-like animals that they found that they think probably were a little more like hippos.
Uh-huh.
But then they also found like creatures related to rhinos. They found like an ancient version of the modern day horse.
Wow.
And then this is what it said. And also a mouse deer.
What? A mouse deer?
A mouse deer. And I don't know what that is really, but it said it was like 1 foot tall and it had saber teeth.
Whoa.
But it's a mouse and a deer, like a mouse deer.
That's
so
awesome.
Imagine that.
That's so
I really
cool.
can't.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I just think it's so cool because
they have those in New York City.
They have
all
mouse
over the
deers.
place. Yeah. Yeah. Just roaming the sewers.
Yeah. Anyway, in this Big Pig Dig, they found over 19,000 fossils.
Whoa.
And it took them like 15 seasons they thought they'd just go in and find some stuff. And they just found and found and found and found and found for years and years. The gift that kept on
giving.
Yeah.
The dig that kept on digging. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
So anyway, Badlands is super cool. You can do the fossil exhibit trail, which is a really short trail. And that one like has interactive plaques, you know, that you can learn about the different fossils that have been found in the park.
Mm-hmm.
That one's really cool. And then again, you want to go to the fossil preparation lab at the visitor center and check in to see what they're working on right then and there. Another place we've been that's pretty close to Badlands is the Mammoth site.
Yes. Uh-huh. That place is awesome. It's so cool. I'm not sure how far outside of Rapid City do you think that is?
So it's in Hot Springs, which is south of Wind Cave. So you're talking probably about an hour and a half or so, hour and a half to 2 hours from Badlands. But it is still kind of in that Rapid City area. And that's an active dig site for mammoths.
That one is so cool. What they think happened, an area of like a watering hole where a bunch of mammoths went there. And then the edge of the watering hole was really unstable. And so a bunch of mammoths basically just fell in and couldn't get out.
Yeah, well, and that's what they think happened at the Big Pig Dig too, basically. So it happens that sneaky soil in South Dakota.
Oh man, it's like lightning sand from Princess Bride, you know, I've got all these creatures that just, you know, gets quicksand or whatever, sucks them in. And then we find their remains 50 million years later, you know, or something like that.
It's so cool. So those are like the main like creature parks. If you want to see creature fossils, White Sands and Badlands are my favorite choices.
Oh, so cool. So cool.
Okay, John, we're still riding the dinosaur train, even though we're off of dinosaurs. And now we want to move on to fossils of, quote, other really cool stuff.
I'm assuming we're going to Guadalupe Mountains. Is that where you're thinking of going?
Let's go to Guadalupe Mountains.
Okay.
So,
awesome. We've talked about a lot of areas where it was the shallow sea and everything like that. But this is the first place where you get to experience the sea coming to us in a lot of ways. Because what happened was, imagine Finding Nemo. Okay, we're in Finding Nemo, you know, and Marlin is like, let's choose a place, you know, let's get with a great view, kind of a thing like that. So Marlin and his family, they're on the Great Barrier Reef. Well, this is a reef, 250 million years ago at Guadalupe Mountains. And then suddenly there's this force underneath the earth that pushes that Great Barrier Reef up, and higher and higher and higher. And so now the Guadalupe Mountains are actually the tallest mountains in Texas. And so that shallow sea just kind of, it went away because the mountains were getting taller and taller. But the Guadalupe Mountains, I mean, it's like world recognized as the best preserved, I think it's Precambrian reef in the world. And so you can see tons of amazing things. This is like 250 to 300 million years ago. You can see things like algae and fungi and amphibians, fishes and insects, like a lot of little creatures. You can find all of their fossils in the rocks. And it's just such a cool place. They've found more than 500 different Permian fossil species. It's easy to get all of these time epochs, these millions and millions of years, these time frames all mixed together. But basically, if you're looking for ocean fossils, ancient ocean fossils, Guadalupe Mountains is the place to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's world renowned because, yeah, as you said, so this is before everything.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like, we're talking when Pangea was the earth.
Right, exactly. The only land on earth was Pangea.
And so, yeah.
And
so
life crawled out of the seas, crawling out onto the land.
Yeah, I mean, they're basically saying there was an arm of the ocean basically that came in and covered this area. Mm-hmm. But it was still Pangea. And then, and so it was just rich with sea life. And then it got cut off. The water got cut off. It got drained. Mm-hmm. But what you're seeing, I mean, a lot of people don't know about Guadalupe Mountains National Park at all.
Right. It's so far out of the way for anything, unless you're actually making a trip there,
Yeah. Well, and so what Guadalupe Mountains actually is, so it's like the top of Texas. It's like on the border of Texas and New Mexico. Mm-hmm. You're only, 30 minutes or so from Carlsbad Caverns from there. And so a lot of people like to hit both when you're in this area. But for me, like when you get to Guadalupe Mountains, so the Guadalupe Mountains actually include 8 of the 10 of Texas's highest peaks.
Right. In this little area right on the border.
And truthfully, if I'm being really honest, when you get to Guadalupe Mountains, at least for me, like the first time, I was like, I mean, they're pretty, but you're in the middle of the desert and they're just not the typical mountains you would expect. Right. Although there are a lot of hidden gems and things in this park. Mm-hmm. But once you realize that what you're actually looking at when you're looking at Guadalupe Mountains is an exposed area of this massive reef.
Right.
Because this reef is 400 miles long.
Right. It's huge.
And it's in a U shape. And so it kind of goes up from Texas up into New Mexico, back down into Texas, and kind of curves back around down closer to Big Bend. But only certain portions of it are exposed. A lot of it's still underground. But this particular area is like the longest exposed section of this reef.
Right.
And it's a Permian reef. It's not a coral reef. And I think that a lot of people get confused by that. It's not coral, it's algae, and it's sponges mostly.
Right.
That like solidified into the rock, and it's actually its own kind of limestone that just has all of this algae and sponges and like all these sea life skeletons in this reef.
Wow.
And so literally people come from all over the world to look at this 250 million year old reef.
Wow.
That's exposed out from the ground.
Oh, that's so cool.
That makes Guadalupe Mountains National Park like a million times cooler if you know that that's what you're looking at.
Right.
Versus just, it's some mountains.
Right. Well, if you go there expecting, like snow-capped mountains, kind of like you would see, I don't know, in Rocky Mountain National Park or Grand Teton or Glacier or something like that, you're going to get there and be like, what is this place? But yeah, you've got to use your eyes. You've got to use your HGTV eyes. Put yourself back 250 million years and then think to yourself, Earth Earth's mega forces forced this thing up, how high is some of those peaks? Like 8,000 feet?
Guadalupe Peak is the highest peak in Texas, and it's over 8,700 feet.
Right. So the Earth shoved this whole reef, 400-mile long reef, from, below sea level up 8,500 feet. And now it's preserved perfectly for us.
Yeah. And what I think is cool about this too, so you can there's a trail called the Permian Reef Trail. It's pretty challenging. It's like 8 miles round trip. You gain a good amount of elevation, but it takes you like right up to that reef line. And when you look at pictures, you can see there's like a definite like reef line.
Right.
On these mountains. But so you can hike up there. It's a more challenging day hike. But what I thought was cool about Guadalupe Mountains is like, even as you're just hiking the regular trails, you can see things in the rocks there. I don't know if you remember when we did the Devil's Hall Trail for the first time with our kids. They were really young, but you're like hiking and you're having to climb up and over boulders and stuff. Like it's a pretty gnarly trail, actually.
It's pretty challenging.
It's like mostly flat, but you're just like, you feel like you're scrambling for a lot of it because you're in the riverbed. Right. And stuff. I don't know if you remember how fun it was because you're looking at your feet a lot and you're trying not to trip and fall. How many like little fossils you can see in the rocks, even just on a regular trail like that.
I do remember some of it, but I think I was holding our boys' hands so much and trying to help them not fall. Maybe I didn't appreciate them as much as I should have.
I know. And so as you're hiking around the park, just look around and see what you can see, because there are a ton of like sea life fossils in this park.
Oh, that's so cool. And now that you mentioned it has kind of like a significant edge to it, it's just like on Finding Nemo, how Marlin wanted a spot at the drop-off.
Yeah, it's the drop-off. Yeah, you can see it.
That's so cool. Oh, I love that park.
So anyway, I think you just appreciate it so much more if you're looking at a, 250 to 270 million year old reef, and that's what those mountains are.
Right.
They're exposed. There's just so many cool things you can find there. So I definitely appreciate that park a lot more knowing that.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Okay. Now, this is the last park we're going to talk about with, quote, really cool other stuff. And it's one of my favorites. I think a lot of people don't know how cool it is, or they've just driven through and they're like, I've had a lot of people tell me, that park is just meh. Like, I don't know why you like that park. And I will tell you why I like this park. We are talking about Petrified Forest National Park.
Amazing location. Not just a drive-through park. No. Definitely not.
No. The Petrified Forest area is mainly Triassic period.
So that's the earliest dinosaur period.
Yeah. So this is 208 to 228 million years ago. It's primarily really before dinosaurs really got turned into anything.
Right. Before the dawn of the dinosaurs.
Before the dawn of the dinosaurs. Yes.
So yeah, this place, the stuff here is over 200 million years old. And what's so neat about this area is a lot of it celebrates the plant life of that time period, which I don't think we have a ton of, or we don't appreciate as much, but the plants, the trees, they're just as cool to me in some ways. And the land formation 200 million years ago in this area where Petrified Forest was like a giant log jam. And so there was some big river systems, probably associated with that big, shallow sea that we've been talking about so much. I'm not sure if it's exactly right there or not, but there was a bunch of river systems that deposited a bunch of logs, tons of logs, giant logs. This was a huge river log jam here at Petrified Forest.
Well, and it's multiple log jams because you can find different quote unquote forests in Petrified Forest. And what is so cool to me, you say they're giant. So there are petrified trees. And petrified trees, we need to talk about this actually. Petrified trees are fossils.
Yes.
It's a living thing. It's something that existed, that was alive, and now it's turned to rock.
It's such a cool process because in order to make a fossil, like we think of the desert, when we think of like, whop, whop, whop. You know, you find something in the desert and the bones just eventually decay and then they turn to dust, right? Well, for something to turn into a fossil like this, these trees, they have to go through a really specific process where they get submerged, they get deposited, and then they get like buried very quickly, or something happens to them where they
lose their oxygen, so they don't have enough time to decay.
Right, exactly. And I think almost all of the petrified trees here are like solid quartz.
Yeah, it's crazy. And they are the most beautiful fossils you'll ever see. The colors.
Yes, amazing patterns. You can see in different forests, you can see like some of them are more white and gray and maybe blue, and in different places, and they're way more red. You know, there's different trees depending on the chemical composition of the trees, you know, how they were covered up by dirt and sand and things like that, and how everything happened to them on the chemical change. They have way different colors. They're so gorgeous. But yeah, it's such an interesting situation for Petrified Forest. It's very unique to me.
Yeah. So they say Petrified Forest National Park actually only protects less than 20% of the petrified wood in northeastern Arizona. So you will find it all around this area. But what I thought was cool, you were mentioning how they're just like these big giant trees.
Yes.
Which just seems so out of place for this area now. But if you go to the Long Logs area, which is one of my favorites because there really are just big long logs of petrified wood. But there are 2 trees in this area. One of them measures 137 feet long and one of them is 141 feet long.
Wow.
And so that basically indicates to the scientists and the paleontologists here that the trees in this area probably were around 200 feet.
Whoa.
Which is really tall.
That's a big tree,
That's a big tree, you know? I mean, you're not like redwoods tall.
Right.
You know?
We're busting past 300, you know, pretty easily.
But this area, you know, it was very heavily forested and there were giant trees here. And these trees have turned to rock. Which is
cool.
just, it is so cool. And so some of my favorite places to go to see this, Long Logs, as I mentioned, that has like just some really big long logs. Crystal Forest is really pretty. Giant Logs is where like there's this big, huge one. It's like its diameter is what, 5 feet?
Yeah, I remember standing next to some of them. I'm 6 feet tall, and I was like, I could have stood inside the tree.
Yeah.
Diameter-wise.
That's Giant Logs. And it's rock.
Yes.
Let me just tell you how amazing this is. It's a giant tree that is a beautiful rock.
Yeah.
It's a fossil. It's so cool.
Yeah. And some of them, it's so neat because you can still see like the bark pattern on some of these trees and like feel the texture of a tree, but it's rock instead of wood.
Yeah. It will blow your mind. Another favorite, and one of the best places I think to see like, you know, the most beautiful examples of this petrified wood and stuff is if you hike in the wilderness areas. So petrified forest, like you can just hike. You don't need to stay on the trail in a lot of these wilderness areas. And we did the Jasper Forest last time we were there, and it was phenomenal.
Yeah. What's so cool when you do some of these outlying areas and some of these more wildernessy hikes, you see the wood as it lays. You know, a lot of these bigger trees, you know, you couldn't move them even if you tried. But what's neat about some of these other ones is you see it's like going to a fresh dig site. You know, you see all the little shards of petrified tree where nature has deposited them and they've laid there for forever. And we're just barely seeing them for the first time after hundreds of millions of years. You feel like you almost have to be a little bit quiet because it's almost reverent in some ways, because this is the first time that these fossilized trees have come out and been exposed in hundreds of millions of years. And so it's a really neat experience. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I love petrified forest. I think, you know, just thinking about and learning about the process of how a tree actually turns into a big, beautiful rock is really spectacular. And so those are, if I'm being honest, that's one of my favorite fossils in any national park.
Right. Oh,
is
absolutely.
Seeing the petrified wood.
Yeah, it's definitely the most picturesque in terms of colors.
Yeah.
Because I did not believe that I could have seen that many different colors come out of a tree fossil.
It almost looks fake.
Yeah.
I mean, you see it and you're like, no way, no way. I do want to mention, so Petrified Forest not only has all these fossilized trees, but there are a lot of other types of fossils in this park as well. So they do keep paleontologists on staff, and they're finding stuff all the time. I won't go into detail about it because I could talk about it forever of what they're finding there. But there is a lot of cool stuff that they are finding in this park. And they actually, similar to Badlands, they have a museum demonstration lab, is what it's called, where you can watch the paleontologists work. You can ask them questions. You can see a collection of things that they've uncovered. And so as far as fossils go, I mean, Petrified Forest is one of the top national parks for seeing just some really cool stuff.
Oh, absolutely. It's so neat. I just love that we can like be a part of it almost with some of these paleontology labs. You know, we can see it happening. We can, you know, ask questions and things like that because and kind of bring back, you know, our inner kid, you know, sometimes with these creatures that are so ancient and so big and so bigger than life. You know, it's interesting. You know, we almost get kind of how I brought up at the beginning of this podcast episode when we were talking about We're Back. You know, it's like, this is our chance in all of these different national parks that we've talked about. This is our chance to use our wishing radio again. You know, it's just like, I want to see a dinosaur. You know, I want to see something cool. I wish dinosaurs were real. And these are the places we get to go to actually experience them and make them real. And it's so fun. And I hope that you've enjoyed your journey with us today on the dinosaur train around all of our national park units with fossils and dinosaurs and all types of creatures. And so get your wishing radio out, have a blast, and we'll see you on the trail. Thanks for exploring the national parks with us.
Please share, like, and subscribe. And if you need any help planning your own trip, click on over to dirtmyshoes.com.
See you next week. Same time, same place.
And don't forget to get some dirt in your shoes.